Now I do have some thoughts on using cotton balls. And then the biggest change, this is just absolutely decimated. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, I'm Kathryn, the Aerogarden Homesteader, and these are the tomato seedlings that are coming up in the Aerogardens. They are looking really good. These ones need to get actually transplanted. Look at how chunky those stems are. These are really nice and strong. These ones are a little bit behind, so the sprout, they started at the same time, but the sprout must be a little less powerful than the harvest, which, I mean, from spec we know. Down here, I actually consolidated all of the big ones into basically 2 Aerogardens. And this one I put new seeds in just to see if I could get a few more, and I do have some coming up. And that's the rest of them, plus a few more seeds. Now, I do have some thoughts on using cotton balls as seed starters, and I will give you a whole list of pros and cons on that. But for now, I'm just going to update you on how the plants are doing, and I finally have space to move all of the plants into one area, and these will be joining them as soon as I pot them. The microgreens tray got cleaned up, so that is now empty. The cilantro is still going. It started growing back. I haven't had a chance to clean it because I was cleaning a bunch of other things, and I felt like this one could just keep trucking along, so it is. The celery is still doing pretty good. I might need to increase its feed. I do have some leaves with some yellowing on them, and again, I'm not sure if that's from the Aerogarden nutrients that time I put it in, or if it's from something else, but I might need to increase them just a little bit. Now, the new ones coming in, they seem like they're doing fine, but I don't know why these ones here are, you know, again, was it Aerogarden or something else? But celery is doing fine so far. And then the biggest change, this is just absolutely decimated. So what happened was I moved a bunch outside, and I will go over some of the pros and cons of using the cotton balls because I definitely have some thoughts. And then I was able to move out the other bell peppers and the Anaheims, and I have some stuff staged for what I want to put in here. Not tomatoes. This isn't going to be tomatoes, but some other things I want to try running an experiment with doing green beans. So I have some, well, I guess they would be yellow beans, but I'm going to put in some bush beans in here and see if I fill every slot, what will my end goal, you know, my end product end up being. How much can I get off of filling up an entire farm with beans? So stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed so you know when I post the video on that one. But that one's going to be interesting because I want to know, is it possible to get a whole bunch out of this? You know, and if I do get a whole bunch, well, the bush beans that I grew, the purple ones, they actually put out a second crop. So if I'm careful harvesting, will this push out a bunch of new crop again? Will I have sort of, maybe not perpetual, but will I get a couple of harvests out of it before the plants just need to be taken down? So that's something to stay tuned for. And finally, so my tomatoes are out here on a rack. I do need to water them. And the peppers. So I have some thoughts. Some of them I let get too big. This was way too big for transplanting up from the hydroponic water, you know, to pots, just because the roots were so long. Now it seems to be doing fine, and I'm okay with that, but I do think that these smaller ones, I think this should have been the maximum size. So when you get 2 to 3 true leaves, 2 to 3 sets of true leaves coming up, that was a good size. Smaller, I felt like it wasn't quite ready to be transplanted, even though I did do it. So over here, I do have some that are smaller, and they do seem to be doing okay. But I felt like this size was a good size, this size was a good size, but the smaller ones were borderline. And I only did it because I was, you know, trying to fill a tray. Now I do have to be careful because the sun can be brutal, and so I did have a couple of tomato plants just not take well to, you know, suddenly being out here. And then over here, these ones, they're doing really well in the soil blocks. I do think they've got a little bit more time on them before I need to up-pot them, but I'm hoping I can just sort of up-pot them to the, you know, sort of a final pot before they need to go in the ground, which will be nice. And then these are the, what are these? These are the bell peppers, and then these over here are the Anaheims. So it's pretty good. Now, for the sponges, the pros on the cotton balls were that they, you know, they're obviously cheap, they're obviously easy to find, and I mean, it works. The roots have an easy time pushing through them. The cons were that sometimes they get slimy, sometimes they fall down, sometimes they don't reach the water. If they don't reach the water, like in the seed starting tray, they actually would get really, really hard. And it was the roots reaching the water that kept the plants alive. It wasn't the fact that the sponge was wet, or it wasn't in that case. And the sponge would actually stick to the top of the seed starting tray, and it made it hard to remove, whether they were slimy and fell to the bottom or if they were stuck to the top, sort of thing. So I had to be really careful when I was removing some of these that I didn't damage too many roots pulling them out, especially the big ones. Their roots were so long that I had to actually coil them up. I had to put a little bit of soil on the bottom of the pot, coil the roots up on top, and then plant them. So I'm kind of a little concerned of what the root situation is going to be like when I take them out of these pots. Now, those are the pros and cons of the cotton balls, but if you think about it, the pros and cons of the sponges that, you know, either Aerogarden or aftermarket sponges that you can get, well, the pros are, well, it's obviously designed to fit in it. It reaches the water. It fits perfectly. The cons are the roots don't always push through properly, so sometimes you get weird growth. They are expensive, and at least in my area, I can't just go down to the store and buy Aerogarden sponges. So there are some pros and cons, and it just kind of depends on what you're doing. I found that the Aerogarden sponges did not break down in the garden at all. And so in the fall, like, you're pulling out an Aerogarden sponge that hasn't changed at all. The cotton balls, they actually started breaking down a little too soon for me, and you know, they basically had disintegrated. So I know that they're not going to stick around. It's a natural fiber, and it was already falling apart and disintegrating. So I feel confident that it's not going to stick in my garden for years and years and years. Like that Aerogarden sponge, I don't know what they pressed it with, some glue or whatever, but it just stuck around. Now, if I'm planting things in the Aerogarden for inside, and I just want something that's not going to mush up or fall apart or, you know, affect the growth or anything, I'll use the sponge, you know, but it's for the garden. The cotton balls I felt like they were a good way to go. I do need to have a cover for them so that they, you know, the light doesn't penetrate right away, and, you know, I don't get that algae growth and that orange, whatever that orange crap was. That was gross. But, you know, I just need to cover them up at first until the plants come up, and then, you know, the plants create their own shade. So yes, there are pros and cons. If I think of any more that I missed mentioning in this video, I will list them on the screen for both of them. In fact, maybe I'll just put an info screen after this that just has them all listed side by side, so you can pause and you know, really see what I felt the pros and cons were between the cotton balls and the, you know, the Aerogarden sponges. And you can just make your own informed choice, and you can try them both and see which one you like better. It is really the difference between starting your things in pots and starting them in soil blocks. Yeah, there's pros and cons to each. Which one do you do? I mean, it's really personal choice. So I hope you found this video useful, because I tried to really go in depth on the sponges and, you know, the versus the cotton ball, and I hope I didn't miss anything, but you know, I tried to give you a good heads up of what to expect from either of them, so that you can make your own informed decision of which way you want to go depending on what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're subscribed so that you can follow along on, you know, the new adventures that are coming on for this 2024 garden season. I'll have some videos up at the end that you might enjoy, and I will see you next time on the Aerogarden Homestead.